For over half a century, humans have endeavored to make business a force for good. But is the movement working? Or is it time to explore a new path forward? Welcome to Less Talk, More Action. We are your hosts, Joel Caesar and Owen Barrett, experts in clean energy, net zero real estate, decarbonization, and entrepreneurship. In each episode, we ask provocative questions and share stories from the front lines of sustainability with leaders in science, tech, and business taking real action to design a cleaner, better future. Thanks for joining the conversation. Now, let's get to work. Welcome to the Less Talk, More Action podcast. My name is Joel Caesar, the world's undisputed voice of Building Decarbonization. Joining me as always is Owen Barrett, the self-proclaimed Adam Newman of Green Building. Today's guest, as we launch the show, is Panama Bartholomy, Executive Director of the Building Decarbonization Coalition. Out of anyone who might challenge my claim of the undisputed voice, he might be it. What a great way to kick off the show, and he brought such optimism and knowledge. And I'd never met him before, but heard great things, and you can see why people speak so highly of him. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we could have had a better first guest. He's so optimistic and so knowledgeable. I think we just got to get out of this like doom and gloom news cycle and get more people like him out there talking about what's actually happening.
Yeah, and even like the stats about what's working and that we're winning. It's just not something that you hear enough about.
I didn't know any of that, and then maybe that's just me being dumb. But I feel like I've been in this industry long enough that I should know some of these stats, or just at least like surface level, directionally, where are things working and not working. And I just think it's a great message to hear.
Well, it's a big part of what we're going to try to do on the show is focus on solutions, focus on optimists. So again, like you said, very honored to have Panama be the first guest. So before we dive into the conversation with Panama, we're going to introduce the show. Let's talk more action. So we're going to be doing bits and having some fun with these kind of shoulder moments around the interviews, and we're going to poke fun at each other and different parts of our industry that aren't working. And but today we would just want to tee up what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'll pass it to you first. Let's talk more action. Why are we doing it? Why are you doing it? What are you trying to get out of this?
Why am I doing it? What a question. I think, I've spent the last 12 years building businesses that take action, do not stand for complacency or idiocracy within sort of corporate culture. We have to do more faster. That's maybe the simplest way to put it. And I think we have to, as you just talked about, we have to celebrate the people, the similar people that are out there doing things faster, having an impact, implementing. I mean, at this point in my career, I don't think I could go back to working for an employer because I've committed so much time and energy to sort of doing things my own way. I probably am unemployable at this point. And it's all because we just have to do more. So I think the more people we can get on here, the more we can showcase that there's other people doing really cool things, having success, that we are winning. It'll just give everybody more faith that, there's point to all this brain damage and frustration and work that everybody's putting into it.
It's well said. I think I'm hoping to add value to the conversation. This, what you might call the sustainability industry, the climate movement. There's various ways we can describe people that are trying to spend their careers making the world better, protecting the environment, protecting our future with their professional lives. And I think in a lot of ways it's a macro thesis. As I've progressed in my career and seen this industry from a lot of different fronts and wearing a lot of different hats, is that we've lost our way a little bit as a movement and gotten too caught up in negativity, too caught up in counting emissions, too caught up in reporting those emissions to some third-party framework, and young people entering the workforce becoming ESG bean counters. It's not what we set out to do. And I, even from a content perspective, I find it difficult to hear a podcast, see a show, find a voice where I get inspired, where I can laugh a little bit, where I can hear optimism about the future. and not be in some wonky, hard to understand, esoteric language. And so if we can provide some of that here, again, we want to have fun. We want to be real talk. We're not going to let people come on the show and just kind of promote what they're doing if we don't agree with it. We're, I hope, going to maintain a level of legitimacy here and not just fluffing whoever wants to come on the show. And, again, you and I have spent a lot of time wearing lots of hats, and hopefully we have some expertise to provide, and hopefully we'll ask good, tough questions of our guests. But the theme, the title of Less Talk, More Action is something I think I want to really lean into for the very near future and hopefully a long-term future of my career, which is we have the tools we need on the truck to solve a lot of the climate, energy, sustainability challenges we think we have. And it's time to stop whining about it and stop counting emissions and reporting them and get our asses to work and solving problems.
Well said. Let's never hear again, I can't do that because it's reporting season.
Yeah, I can't wait to get someone from one of the frameworks who put folks through reporting season on the show to maybe push back. Again, you and I are going to have to be open-minded about this, and I think that's something we're going to have to hold ourselves to as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, with that, welcome everyone to our podcast, Let's Talk More Action. We hope you're going to enjoy it and have fun with us. And please, as you follow along, feel free to take shots at us on social media. We love it. We want to have an open dialogue. Thanks for joining. Joining us today is Panama Bartholomy, Executive Director of the Building Decarbonization Coalition, a nationally recognized leader in climate and energy policy. Panama is at the forefront of transforming our built environment to meet the urgent demands of the climate crisis. Through the coalition, he's aligning policymakers, industry leaders, and advocates to eliminate fossil fuels from buildings and create healthier, more resilient communities for all. So, Panama, welcome to the Less Talk, More Action podcast.
Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
So this is going to be our new launch episode of the new show.
Crazy.
You're
What
going
an
to be
honor to
famous,
have
Panama.
you here as well, you'll hear when you hear the show that I call myself the undisputed voice of building decarbonization. Now, you might be someone who disputes that. So we're honored to have you here. Our show is we'll get into here is going to be about a lot of things, but a lot of building decarbonization. It's a world Owen and I have lived in, but we'll expand deeper into sustainability at large, policy, innovation, entrepreneurship. But yeah, there's going to be heavy building decarbonization, which is why it's really special for you to be here as someone who's really known as a voice, a leader, a national spokesperson for the movement we call building decarbonization. So with that, let's dive in. We start all guests with the same question. Panama, how are you taking action to make the world a better place?
Yeah, let me just say I appreciate the focus on building decarbonization. Like I do hear there are other sectors people tell me about, but I just don't think any of them are as sexy as buildings. So good to have more podcasts focused on what people should really be talking about. What am I doing to take action? Our organization really feels firmly that you can't just work on public policy. You can't just work on market transformation. You can't just work on consumer education. That actually you have to work on all three of those pieces together in order to be able to move this transition forward. If any one of those lags, you actually have a big problem of lagging the other two. If public policy folks don't see the consumer demand and don't see the market being able to provide what they need to provide, then the public policy folks get scared. If the consumers don't have this affordable and ready, then they back off. And if the market doesn't see the demand or the right market conditions, then they're not going to commit to it either. You have to have all three of those moving forward together. And so that's how we're taking action. We're working across 10 states across America to try to move forward all three legs of the stool so that we can have an ever-growing stool that gets us higher and higher and closer to our goals.
Panama, I want to learn more about the 10 states that you guys are working in, but a decent amount of our audience are youngsters that are trying to get into the clean tech, sustainability, climate space. How did you get to be, as Joel alluded to, the leader of building decarbonization in the country, or one of them? Like, what's your background? How'd you get here?
I've been working in buildings and climate for about 25 years, half of it in government, half of it in the nonprofit sector. And a lot of it started out, I got really lucky. Right out of college, I got an internship that I thought was going to last maybe 3 months in Sacramento, and it turned into 13 years working for some of the leaders in state government in California and some really critical administrations. The Schwarzenegger administration, the Brown administration, the Newsom administration, being able to be on the front lines about, as we saw renewables really take over the conversation in California. And then I've been really lucky to be able to work in the nonprofit sector. And the nonprofit sector from a place of really recognizing the importance of the market. And it's not just good enough to pass laws. You actually have to be able to bring the market along. You have to be able to work with manufacturers, the design and construction community, installers, to be able to make sure this transition actually takes hold and is going to work. It's not going to collapse under its own weight. So through that, I've met a ton of people, learned a ton, failed just an amazing amount of times. And it's really brought me to this place. And it brought me to wanting to run a coalition, because what I learned is that it's really hard to do this alone. It's really hard for one part of the sector to do this alone. And while it may take a bit longer, you can get a lot more done if you're doing it with a lot of different partners on this journey as well.
You know, failure is an interesting word to use. We're going to talk to a lot of entrepreneurs on the show. Both Owen and I have been entrepreneurs in the past. Owen currently is running his own company. I know we've both had our failures, and that's part of that journey. And I'm going to segue right to maybe a sticky, big conversation around building decarbonization and failure, and sort of my own story. I got put in charge of Google's global net zero real estate strategy in 2021, and there was incredible tailwinds behind us. Huge company, great resources, long-standing commitment to sustainability and climate. Really an amazing real estate organization that is largely responsible for transforming the way we work. So all those things, tailwinds. And we struggled to actually execute. And, I think there's a lot of reasons you can point to there, but, I was proud of the work we did to tee up a program that could execute, but taking action is hard. Electrifying buildings is hard. And I learned that lesson really clearly at one of the world's most wealthy companies. Then I went to a company called Block Power, a startup trying to do building decarbonization, turnkey, at scale. Great founder, well-funded, embedded in cities around the country that had city governments that were committed to it. Also difficult to do in these cities where we had great incentives, unique incentives that Block Power had access to. We still kind of struggled to execute. Owen and I created a multifamily private equity firm, small little company called ZNE Capital, where we had a thesis to use solar for building decarbonization as the primary lever. And we had some success, but also had trouble raising money and getting the right capital from so-called impact investors, which Owen loves to rag on. But all that to be said, it's like, I sometimes think, man, what are we doing? Is this even possible? Like, should I be doing this with my career? Maybe you're going to say, look, Joel, you just suck at it. And that's the common theme here. But it's like something I really wanted to ask you. It's like, how do you maintain optimism when it is such a challenging field to actually go and retrofit existing buildings?
Yeah. I tell my staff all the time, like, you got to be an optimist if you work in climate change, right? I mean, you're looking at all the data in front of you that would tell you that this is going to be a hard, if not impossible hill to climb, and yet you still decide to come to work every day and try to work on this. And so what I'll say is that you guys are at the forefront of the transition, and that's quite often the hardest part of the transition. I tell people all the time, it's never going to be harder to decarbonize a building than it is right now. It's only going to be getting easier from here on out as the market matures, as consumer awareness grows, as more and more contractors come in, as there's greater competition and better products. It's only going to be getting better here. And right now is the struggle. And when we look back 25 years from now about how we were able to completely eliminate pollution from buildings, we'll look back at the pioneering efforts of folks like you that really laid the groundwork, went through all the failures so that we could learn the lessons to be able to make it happen. And so what gives me hope? What gives me hope is that we're winning, guys. We just finished 2024, the third straight year of heat pumps outselling fossil fuel alternatives for heating across the country. We're one of only 10 countries in the world right now where heat pumps are the dominant form of heating technology being sold. And if you look at those other 9 countries, it's a bunch of European countries and Canada. And we're twice the population of those other 9 combined. We're twice the household number of those other 9 combined. And so we actually, building decarbonization is one of the glowing spots of the clean energy transition right now. And America is one of the leading places for that to happen. A quarter of Americans now live in a jurisdiction that's adopted a building decarbonization code. Electric water heating is completely beating gas water heating and has responded better coming out of our little mini recession with high inflation and high interest rates. All the surveys coming back from contractors right now are that they're getting more questions about heat pumps, are installing more heat pumps than ever, and they actually expect, the contractors are expecting that these trends are only accelerating. And so for me, what gives me hope is the market signals. Everything in our space right now is up and to the right. And I'm just so encouraged that right now the market is actually out in front of the policy, unlike a bunch of other sectors.
Panama, I love the optimism.
Before you jump in, did you hear that? Did you catch that? So when we declare victory, it's because of me. I'm the pioneer.
I heard him say, credit to. You guys, plural. No, I mean, I love the optimism. I think it's something that our space needs more of. I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know if you know the answer to it, but of all the sort of the wins that you just mentioned, and I like to point out another win, which is in 2024 of all the new electrons that came online, 90% were from renewables, which is incredible. Yet, all you see in the headlines is doom and gloom. It doesn't work. From the right and the left is like extremism, extremes in the wrong way. It's like dividing the country on both sides. How do we reposition the conversation so that we focus on the optimism, the positivity, the market signals? Because I feel like once that catches, it's just going to accelerate the rate of change. But I feel like we have a hard time doing that. We collectively, the industry.
Everything Panama just said. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, Owen. One of the big lessons I hope that our movement gains out of the most recent election is that we need to normalize building electrification. Like your air conditioner shouldn't be something that you fight with your uncle about over Thanksgiving dinner, right? It's just it's just a way to provide comfort to your family. And so I think a lot of this is getting back to the basics of building electrification actually provides significant benefits, whether you're a homeowner or whether you're a commercial building owner, whether you're an occupant or resident renter. It's just a better lifestyle. And we need to be doing a lot more focus on that. And unfortunately, getting away from probably a lot of the climate conversation on this. I think it's been proven we're going to get some early adopters on that. But when we're at 56% market share across America of heat pumps compared to fossil fuel heating equipment, when we're at 60% market share for electric water heating, we're beyond the early adopters now. And we have to be getting for the mainstream and into some of the hard to adopt folks. And the climate message just isn't going to sell. More comfortable living space, better air quality, better control, in a lot of areas, better bills. Like those are the kind of things that are actually going to sell for folks. And it's been proven time and again through polling, marketing. We got to focus on the benefits and realize that we're beyond the early adopters and we're into the mainstream, and we got to focus on messages that actually work for them and get it out of this partisan approach of Democrat versus Republican, conservative versus liberal. Like we're just talking about like how to have a better home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it resonates so much. I have someone in my family who's a hardcore Republican, hated EVs before Musk kind of went the other side, or that's how it's been perceived. But then he drove one. He drove a Tesla, and he's like, "Oh, this is so much better than anything I've ever driven." And I feel like it's that experience. It's forgetting about the climate discussion potentially, depending on who you're talking to, and just focusing on the performance or the comfort or the ease or whatever it may be. But then it's so important for so many different clean technologies that we're trying to get widely adopted.
So I want to tell you about this fun thing that we do. We run this program called the Chefluencer program, where we actually trained chefs to be building electrification educators, not electric cooking educators, but actually building electrification educators. And this comes in part from some polling we did. We polled just under 1,000 people across California about who do you actually trust on information around electrification, like friends and neighbors, scientists, doctors, government officials, your governor, your utility, nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera.
Podcast hosts. Yeah.
Broadcast hosts, exactly. I don't want to tell you what you guys scored. And then we broke it out by party. Democrat, Independent, Republican. The only group that scored above 60% across all three were friends and neighbors. It's like, hey, Johnny down the block, Mary up the street. What do you think about electrification and the like? One of the only other groups that scored above 50%, and only one of two for Republicans that scored over 50%, were chefs. Not on cooking, but on electrification. And so it really validated some of what we were finding, which is chefs are a way to break down some of the barriers to conversations on electrification. And it's counterintuitive to a lot of people. A lot of people are like, oh, you can't talk about cooking. Like, you got to stay away from the cooking stuff. Let's just focus on water heating. But I don't know about you guys, if you ever tried to get like 170 people to come out to a community center on a Thursday night, talking about their water heater isn't a really big sell. A celebrity chef cooking amazing, culturally appropriate food, that'll fill a room of people. And all of a sudden, you got the chef, got cookies going, you got some amazing pad thai going, and all of a sudden the chef's talking about heat pumps and water heating. And there are a few technologies, like, I love myself a heat pump. Heat pump water heaters are cool and everything. But like the Teslas of our movement, like, they're really incredible. Like, this is the induction stove, and when you can show that off to people, people have that same experience your relative have. It's like, damn, this is better. Like, this is actually better. I want this in my life. And we found that this is the gateway technology and the gateway messenger for this. And so we're training dozens of chefs all over the country to be able to go to legislative events, city council events, home builders associations, realtors associations, to be able to really break down some of these barriers, and using food as the key way to be able to do it. So totally agree. Like, that experiential opportunity just can't be beat.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's our friend Rochelle. She's with you guys?
She is. I think we're one of the few environmental nonprofits with a chef on staff. And Chef Rochelle, man, she's one of the best follows on LinkedIn.
No doubt. And even you're reminding me of the successes at Google largely were around our kitchen electrification program, which she was involved in. She advised. We did events. You're so exactly right. I mean, I think one of the bright spots, again, of a challenging program, at least in the early stages. But let's transition to another big question, Panama, I have. So again, Block Power, my role there, I was the head of Green Cities. Block Power had contracts with city governments to be a building decarbonization implementation partner. And we had really solid tailwinds. We had unique incentives that only we could offer. We offered this turnkey solution. We were focusing on low income housing. But in a few markets, San Jose, Denver, Cambridge, Massachusetts, common theme was we were competing against cheap gas. And it led us to reflect on, while we were, of course, excited to be trying to implement heat pumps at scale, especially for low-income housing, for many of the co-benefits beyond just decarbonization, it's a challenge to fight against cheap gas. So I guess my question is the vision really absolute in your mind at the Building Decarbonization Coalition? Like, every single building by some date will have no fossil fuel? Or is there, like, in some of these markets, there's gas infrastructure and gas isn't the worst thing?
Yeah.
I can't believe you said that, Joel.
We asked the provocative questions here of the experts.
Got to be spicy. Here's the thing with gas. We know that gas is the fastest growing climate pollutant in the world as Asia races to decarbonize and get off of coal. We know that it is one of the leading contributors to smog because of all of our work on the power sector and on cars. Places like California, burning gas in buildings produces twice the amount of smog as all of the cars and the power plants combined. We know that 1 in 8 cases of asthma in homes from childhood asthma is coming from gas stoves. What a lot of people don't know is a massive amount of money that is being spent on the gas system and gas system replacement and the ticking time bomb for that. Over the next 25 years, there's going to be just under $1 trillion of ratepayer money spent on replacing the existing gas system we have and gold plating it for future generations to deal with. And you think about all of our net zero goals are right around like 25 more years. So we're gold plating an energy system that we know that we're going to try to get rid of. At the same time, we're struggling to provide a really high quality electric system, and we're going to have to gold plate as well. It makes no sense to be investing heavily in these two systems. And so, yeah, right now we have some cheap, heavily subsidized natural gas, but we're about to have some really expensive natural gas because all that $1 trillion of investment is going to be passed on to ratepayers over the next 2 decades, and it's going to be sending those costs through the roof. So we've released 2 studies on this, the future of gas New York and the future of gas Illinois, where we looked at what the continued expansion of the gas system and that replacement costs are going to be. It's about $10 million a mile in New York, about $6 million a mile in Illinois, and what that's going to mean for the bills of New Yorkers and Illinoisans over the next couple decades. And so we're about to be competing against a much more expensive fossil fuel here in the near future. But right now, it can be a struggle. And what you're seeing, though, is a lot of the models are wrong. What we're seeing is you look at actual bill analysis of the impacts of putting in a heat pump or a heat pump water heater, and even in really expensive electric rate areas like California or New York, when you actually look across a wide variety of installations and you're looking at the aggregate, you're actually seeing that it's pretty close to a wash for heat pumps and for water heating when they installed. The models will tell you different, but actually people seeing it installed, we're having some really good numbers come out.
What do you attribute that to? Do you know?
I attribute it to the real world of people actually using the technology rather than assumptions being made by academics and the people behind the models. The whole thing with models around garbage in, garbage out, when we actually apply it. And in California, we're just about to publicly release information, a bill analysis of 20,000 installations from their tech program, the state's largest heat pump and heat pump water heater program. And it's going to show for heat pump water heaters, it's a total wash, like $5 difference over a year, plus or minus, depending on the house. And for heat pumps, for those houses that already had air conditioning, same thing. It's a total wash. Now, for those houses that didn't have air conditioning, of course, now people are like, yes, finally, air conditioning. And so their bills are going to go up, but they're probably going to get an air conditioner anyway with
So
the
is their
extreme
quality
heat
of
that we're
life.
starting to experience. Exactly.
So what's next? Building Decarbonization Coalition. I mean, I guess I'm not following you as closely as I once did. When I was at Google, I know we were involved with you all, but you're in 10 states. What's the future? What are you focusing on now?
And why only 10 states?
Yeah. So how about I start with the 10 states and then talk about what's next? So the 10 states that we picked, basically the West Coast, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and then kind of the mid-Atlantic up to New York. And so Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, New York. Those 10 states collectively represent half of all gas demand in the country and half of appliance sales. And we know if we can get those 10 states to move together on policies like good incentive programs, the phasing out of appliance sales, building the right market, and educating consumers on a relatively similar path, that's going to create such a bifurcation in the market that it'll force the market to go to DC and actually negotiate with Congress and the administration on a long-term phase-out schedule for gas appliances in this country. The market, led by the manufacturers, were ready to do this in 2021 with all the momentum that was happening. And then a whole series of red state legislatures passed bans on building electrification policies. And that took some of the pressure off. But we know that the manufacturers see what's coming. And if we can get these 10 states to bifurcate the market, we know that that'll bring it up again. So what's next? What really excites me is scale. How do we really get to scale? And a lot of people call this different thing, call it zonal electrification or, targeted electrification. We like to call it neighborhood electrification, neighborhood building decarbonization, where you're actually taking whole neighborhoods off the gas grid and clipping whole branches off of the gas grid at once. And it has all sorts of benefits. One of the hardest things that I'm sure you guys have seen is like the need to educate consumers, and every single purchase decision having to be exactly right in order for you to be able to get an entire branch of the gas system no longer delivering gas. Like every time a water heater breaks, a furnace breaks, a stove breaks, a hot tub breaks, like you have to have the right contractor meeting the customer at the right time in their economic life, with the right incentive program. Like everything has to line up, and it's just too much to expect. And if any one gas appliance stays active on that gas trunk, you have to keep the entire neighborhood with gas being supplied to it. And so the opportunity for neighborhood scale is to actually go into a neighborhood that relies upon the same gas line, work with the utility to say, hey, we're going to be turning off the gas over the next 5 years to this neighborhood. The utility is going to provide you $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 to completely replace all the appliances in your home, to do the wiring. We're going to bring in good union contractors. Everything is going to be permitted. We're going to give you guarantees on the work. You don't have to learn about this stuff beyond just enough to say yes to be able to get all these free appliances. And then we're going to be clipping off the gas to your neighborhood. And this is happening all over the country right now. There are efforts in New York with pilot projects going, Massachusetts pilot projects happening. California, Pacific Gas and Electric put out its first RFP where they hired a contractor and said, here are all of the neighborhood projects that we're going to be replacing the pipe in over the next 5 years. Go ahead and see if you can actually get them to agree to be electrified instead of us spending the millions of dollars on putting new pipe into the ground right there. And so it's this amazing opportunity right now for us to be creating a new model that'll actually get us to scale. Now, I don't think that's going to provide more than, say, 35% of all the buildings that'll be electrified in between now and 2050. But that's still a huge chunk of far less education, far less customer acquisition costs, like way better installations, actually people getting permits for it all and having better customer experiences. So I'm really excited about neighborhood electrification and just a huge new body of work and a bunch of professionals working in that space.
Have you guys rolled that out yet successfully?
Yeah, so it's early stages. We are one of the contractors for Pacific Gas and Electric working on that project across their service territory. And so literally going door to door, knocking on people's doors and saying, here's this amazing offer that you probably seems too good to believe. They already have a completed project. Eversource Energy over in Massachusetts has the first thermal energy network project put out by a utility where they had to go around door to door and convince everybody in order to be able to do that. So you're starting to see the first. And if you go to our website, buildingdecarb.org, you can see a map of all the neighborhood scale building decarbonization projects across the country. And there's over 100 projects that are either completed or underway already across the country. Red states, purple states, blue states, owned by universities, owned by utilities, owned by communities, all sorts of different kind. You can click on each different one to get more information on it. So
it's awesome.
It's probably the fastest growing part of building decarbonization right now.
Super cool. I had another maybe spicy question I used to think about in my block power days when we would get these incentives that were designed to give the homeowner or the multifamily owner a chunk of cash to reduce the capital expense to install heat pumps. And that can be fraught with an administrative burden that's challenging. Maybe there's shady contractors who just kind of add that as their cost and no one ever sees the delta reduction. why don't we do, and Owen, you might be able to answer this too. I know you're an expert on utility rates with your solar business. Why don't we can we offer some kind of special tariff once someone does building electrification to change that calculus when you're competing against cheap gas? Like, okay, I just electrified my house or my multifamily building. Now I'm going to cheaper electricity rate. In these jurisdictions where you have everyone aligned, utility, city, state government, why don't we try that? Is there structural
Seems
reasons,
like
I would
you could.
imagine?
I know, like in Chicago, they have different tariffs if you have electric heating or not. So it's not that far fetched to think, oh, you've suddenly electrified your whole house, you fall on this different tariff. My guess is you need approval from utilities, which is a lengthy process. Mano, you probably have more to say about that. But I mean, anytime you want the utility to do something new, it's a headache or a nightmare, or it takes forever.
Yeah. But it's like what you said. You're absolutely right. And it's like what you said, Joel. People are really committed to it, and you got to make it affordable. It's like, how are we actually going to electrify not only buildings, but transportation, commercial, and industry if we have unaffordable electric rates? And how are we going to compete with cheap gas until gas gets expensive without those rates? And so you are seeing utilities and public utilities commissions around the country working on this. There are now 10 and about to be 13 public utilities commissions with what are called future of gas proceedings underway, where they're actually having a proceeding on how they're going to wind down the gas system in alignment with their climate laws that they've already passed. And a key part of that is the rate making piece. And so just some examples of it, in California, you got utilities that have electric home rates where they recognize that people are going to be using more electricity. And so getting away from a pure volumetric rate and actually putting in a higher fixed charge, but being able to lower volumetric rates and be able to raise the baseline before you get to charge higher and higher tiers of the electric rate. And so it's called ELEC in PG&E territory. It's called something else in other territories, but the California utilities have electric home rates in order to be able to encourage you to be able to make the switch. And I think you're just going to see a wave of that going to other utilities across the country as they're also going through these proceedings.
Panama, are you paying attention to the legislation in California that's trying to roll back the grandfathered net metering 2.0? And how that, because I think about what you're saying now with these utilities having these special tariffs for electrified homes, and it all makes sense, assuming the utilities keep up their end of the bargain. But if everybody suddenly electrifies their home and then the utilities renege on the tariffs, the whole industry is going to lose a bunch of steam because no one's going to trust what the utilities are doing all of a sudden.
Yeah. Solar and a heat pump, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. There's few better marriages out there, few better partners. And we need to be encouraging that rather than discouraging it. We need to be encouraging it for new customers. And we absolutely cannot be breaking contracts with people. Yeah. We cannot be breaking agreements that people made based on economic understandings of the moment and going back on it. So I really hope that legislation doesn't have any more legs and we're able to fight it back, and that we actually find ways to both make the grid more renewable and cleaner, but also all the benefits of decentralized power, rooftop solar, and everything that it brings, not only to those individual households, but the entire grid. We have to be doing that, and it's a real shame to be seeing the fight against rooftop solar.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Panama, we're getting close to having to wrap up, but another question, I think I'll go back to the way Owen teed us up in the beginning about younger audience, and especially those of us who've been doing this a long time feel a responsibility to hopefully be nurturing the future leaders of this movement. What advice do you give a young person who's in college, coming out of college, or maybe not going to college, coming out of high school, who thinks, I want to be part of the climate solution? I am interested in buildings, construction, real estate. What would you tell them to do? What's the best field to get in, or what would be some advice you might give them?
It's an amazing time right now for that generation. If you talk to any of the boomers or the Gen Xers that are running construction firms, running HVAC installation companies, running electrical firms, they say, we cannot hire. we cannot find people that want to come and to be able to do this work. There's going to be a huge shortage of workers coming up right at a critical time when there's going to be gigantic demand for this. And so people that are actually coming in interested in having skills in this are going to be able to have their pick of wonderful opportunities about where to be able to work in this space. And once you put a few years into the trades, it is a really, really well-paying job. You can maintain a family off that income. And I think with the huge retirement boom we're going to see from boomers, you're going to have an opportunity to quickly move into running your own business with a ton of work as well. So I think the trades, for those people that want to go into that side of the work, is going to be really, really attractive for folks with just a bunch of hiring and a bunch of need. For folks that want to go the college route, I highly recommend focusing on something besides sustainability studies. I went through sustainability studies, and that worked really well for something at the time, which was like late 90s, early 2000s. It was early in this movement. We're now at a point where this is ingrained, and we need computer engineers, we need marketing experts, we need political science experts, we need people of all these different trainings that want to make a difference in climate to be able to apply their skills within companies, nonprofits, government agencies to be able to bring those skills to the climate movement. So yeah, you can still focus on climate, but you can come at it a bunch of different ways. And so I highly recommend go ahead and get some actual applied technical industry-based training. Go and work in the private sector for a while so you actually understand how the sector works, how the business works, how this all actually happens. Go work in government for a little bit so you can just get like buried under seeing how that works and get and deal with frustration, and then come back out and have your choice. And that's just, that's the perfect education for the space.
Owen and I both kind of smirked when you started with the don't study sustainability, because it's a theme. Both he and I say that, and other guests we've had have said it, that even like all of us here came from that kind of educational background. But I think, we've turned a corner on that generalized degree being the value that it used to have, I think.
I don't know that we've turned the corner, though. I think we've turned the corner in practicality, but I still think the message is there from, the academics of get this sort of generalist degree.
Oh, sure.
I think that needs to change. And I think I also, in a past life, Panama, to your point about the trades, I was doing solar installation for schools. And we spun up a nonprofit called Trade Labs. And the whole idea was, clean tech is the fastest growing job market in California. We're doing clean tech installations at schools. Let's take kids and teach them on site. And I banged my head against the wall for 2 years trying to get the facilities team to talk to the educational side of the house to coordinate within a district. And it drove me crazy. But there's such an opportunity to get these kids hooked on the trades at a young age, kind of get rid of the stigma and teach them about how lucrative it can be, all the opportunities, owning a business, being an entrepreneur. I mean, there's so much upside. I feel like the schools are kind of still failing. Like this opportunity is here now, and they're not being, it's not being emphasized as much as it should be.
Yeah. I run into a lot of kind of chicken and egg there is like, do you work on transforming the current businesses that are out there so that they're working on building electrification, heat pump installation, so that there's a good place to send kids to? Or do you work first on the kids, like you said, and be able to train them up and give them the skills and then put them out into the field? And I think you need both, right?
Yeah.
We're choosing to work like, how do you make sure there's good businesses for kids to be able to get into is where we're trying to. So passing the laws, working with the market, getting the consumer demand going so that we're transitioning these businesses over. So there's some places where when the kids get in, they're like, oh, I'm installing a bunch of fossil fuel stuff? It's like, no, don't worry. We've made this transition happen and it's ready for you, and all that training is going to be put to good use.
Yeah.
The USGBC used to run a national program in the fall called Green Apple Day of Service. It was one of my favorite things I used to do. I used to volunteer to go into schools and do some kind of educational outreach. They encouraged professionals that were in the green building movement to go and work with schools. And I don't know if they still do it, but I've been actually kind of conspiring with some of my friends in California to try to do something again this fall. So maybe the three of us can do a Green Apple Day of Service and
That'd be great.
reinvigorate your
it.
idea, Owen.
Yeah. I still think it's a great idea. It's just another business model of mine that's brilliant, Joel.
All right, Panama, this has been a pleasure. We're going to have you back. I have more questions, but we've got to wrap up. So we always finish with the same question, and it's around optimism, which you've brought in spades today. But, in a movement, as Owen kind of alluded to, sustainability and climate, we tend to sometimes focus too much on the negative and the bad news out there. But there's a lot of optimism. So what gives you hope for the future?
What gives me hope is that we're winning. It took solar 40 years to reach price parity. U.S. Green Building Council and LEED, we've never been able to really break above, say, 5% in any one market. And we actually, in 6 short years, have completely transformed the heating, HVAC, water heating space across America as a movement. And the fact that you actually have the market now taking the lead rather than the policy makers really gives me hope that this is going to be a sticky transition, that no matter the political winds that face us, we've now started something that can't be stopped and is only going to continue and get easier and easier for all of us moving forward. So that's what I'm really inspired by.
Really well said. Well, thank you, Panama. We'll have to
Thank you,
wrap up on that. But let's tell the audience how we find you. Where's the website? You personally, social media, anything you can plug here?
Yeah, social media is a wasteland right now, but definitely spending most of my time on LinkedIn. So just Panama Bartholomy over there at LinkedIn. And then our website, buildingdecarb.org, is just an incredible resource, not only of our own work, but we keep this massive library of all the reports and the studies and the filings that are happening out there. You can find it on our website. So buildingdecarb.org is a wonderful resource for the community.
Really great. Well, we'll put it in the show notes, make sure everyone can find it. And with that, I want to thank you, Panama, and thank you everyone else for joining. You can find Owen and I on LinkedIn as well, usually actively antagonizing the more talk, more wine sustainability crowd. You can find this podcast and more great content at letstalkmoreaction.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. And until next time, we encourage you to ask yourself, what are you doing to take action to make the world a better place?
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Panama. That was great.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Panama. I learned a lot.
Right on. Absolutely.